Welcome to our podcast, What Happened to the Lucky Country? The topic today will be what happened to the Australian government. So I thought we'd start today talking about the government issues, and I just had a summary here. They can win based on 32% of the vote. There's corruption, 15 billion, violence, terrorism, and there is no trust. And talking about government, I looked up what government is. The Grattan Institute claims there are 5 issues facing the government at the moment: climate change, housing, productivity, an ageing population and tax reform. And I'd add to those democratic review of the 3 levels of government, spending rules for government, because I don't think the government can be trusted to spend money we need them to spend. Reset our expectations, and immigration is unsustainable. And this is not about being woke, it's about pure supply and demand. I'm not talking about who's coming in and who's going out, I'm just saying there's too many coming in and there's not enough houses being built.
Well, I think there's too many of the wrong type coming in. I don't mean race, I mean, a year or so ago, they went looking for yoga teachers.
What?
So instead of bringing in doctors and engineers and whatever else, we actually need tradies. So we're short of tradies. So tradies and that sort of stuff. We actually started looking for dog walkers, yoga teachers. We're short of teachers. We're short of tradies. We're short of probably engineers and other and doctors. Because we're short of doctors in the bush. Can't get the doctors out there. So there are some trades or types of people or professions that we probably do need to bring in and not slow down, but there also are some types that we should be saying no to based on their profession, not on their race or anything else. That's my view.
Well, there used to be, when we were younger, there used to be a list that said, these are the 5 skills we're looking for.
There's still a list, and if you look on that list, it's yoga teachers
fuck off.
That sort of stuff.
So that gives me a good segue to the next. I looked up the definition of good government. It refers to the effective, transparent and accountable management of public affairs aiming to enhance the well-being of citizens, uphold the rule of law and foster economic prosperity.
I would agree with that as a general definition.
That's from the 2024 Chandler Good Governance Index. But do we have that?
We don't have that, and in addition, what we do have is, well, I think one of the problems is that the independents and the Teals and some of the smaller parties are only really have a strong position on 1 or 2 items or issues, and we don't know what the rest of their positions are. I think also that the bigger parties, once they get in, they immediately move or profess that the policies that they went in with are now a mandate. So that mandate, I think, is what justifies them, or they think justifies them in making bigger decisions on behalf of the country. So,
but then they don't have the numbers in the lower and upper house.
No.
To get the mandate through. And you could argue that there's a mandate, but that's 32% of the vote.
That's right. So that in my mind, that's not a mandate.
No, that's not a mandate either. So I think we've got to change that.
So, so if we talk about the system itself, I think it's a pretty good system overall, but
I think it sucks.
Well, I think the outcomes suck. I think compulsory voting is strength. I think, in my mind, what I think's happened is compulsory voting is a real strength of our parliament and our system, and I think we're the only Western country in the world that actually has compulsory voting. But what that means is that both major parties and probably most of the smaller parties are forced into the middle, right? Because everyone's voting, we don't get the extremes that you see, say, in the US or some of the other countries where a smaller, more right-wing or left-wing, more strongly right or more strongly left gets in, and they can get stuff done. Whereas our system, because it's compulsory, forces everybody into the middle. And, what we see now, we combine what I've just said in the last few minutes. If we combine the big parties going to the middle and overlapping on policy or not clear on how to be more discreetly or different from each other, the single party policies coming in and jumping on board and giving preferences to the bigger parties who are now in the middle. So the strong positions we wanted to have on the outside with the Teals and independents get washed away by being forced into the middle. So what that means is we end up with, rather than getting strong decisions and strong policies and good leadership, we end up in the middle and whitewash the whole thing. We compromise all the way through. So we end up with a compromised outcome in the middle, which doesn't really effectively deliver a strong government. That's how I see it.
I saw a cartoon once that said a politician was waiting to go on stage, and he said, "I can't go on yet. The pollsters haven't told me what the answer is." I think it's interesting today because I assume Lay got rolled today.
She did.
Clearly, 10 votes.
Oh, I didn't see the data. I only just caught it.
So she was a centre Liberal rolled by a Conservative.
Yep.
Now that scares me. That's more Trump.
Well, you can't have it both ways. You either
No, you can't have it both ways. But what are they going to do to compete with One Nation?
Well, I think their plan will be to move more towards One Nation and try and capture One Nation in. So it's exactly what I'm saying before. If they've been forced in the middle, and the last 10 Australian, maybe not 10, but the last 6 Australian Liberal leaders have all been forced in the middle and have got a shit track record. So they're going to be forced out of the middle towards One Nation over to the right. And they'll try and suck in those votes. I would think that's what they're going to do. And to be honest, I actually don't think that's a bad outcome. I think because the other factor in all this, if both major parties are moving towards the middle and they're compromising all the way through and they're trying to keep as many people as happy as they can, which I assume is their intent, with the rise of wokeism, that means that they're now chasing things that they may not have chased in the past. So if we have a more strong right party come in, say this new leader, he will upset some woke people. But the answer to that is in the data where we see, well, why is One Nation rising? Right? So the wokeism in the middle is one thing. People are now responding to the wokeism in the middle by saying, no, One Nation is now attractive because they're not in the middle and they're out here and they're against wokeism. So I think there's a few factors contributing.
We're very lucky in that One Nation, the leader can't speak.
No.
God, if she could speak, we'd be really in trouble. So professional politicians, I don't agree with professional.
I agree. I think they should have at least owned their own business for 10 years.
Yeah.
Have worked outside of any government department for 10 years. Well, it's not true. Maybe if they were police or one of the forces or something, that might be okay. But, yeah, all these politicians that we're seeing, especially at the state level, that enter when they're 18 and just work the system and don't know and have lived in a bubble from the moment they left university all the way through to, well, I'm now in the leadership party. They've got no fucking idea about what's going on in the real world.
I totally agree. Labor goes through unions and these sort of things too, never work.
Well, that's worked out well, the unions, isn't it?
Well, it's our kids are going to pay for this.
Well, the part that pisses me off is that, okay, they've revealed this week that all these findings, but if you had walked into the local pub and asked, hey, do you think that the Labor Party knows about the corruption in the CFMEU? And one, do you think the CFMEU is corrupt? I guarantee 99% of the people in the pub will go yes. Two, do you think the Labor Party knew about it? 99% or maybe 90% of the people would have gone yes. So it's not been a secret and not been that well hidden and not unknown. For them to act surprised and shocked at all, I didn't know, a lot of crap.
Not a lot of crap. Paying $270,000 for a guy who owns a sign.
Yep. Well, now you've got the same thing in the treaty administration. They're all on $250,000, $300,000. Hand-picked, no transparency about the selection process, nothing, just ridiculous.
My concern too is there's so much concern from the politician side about their own re-election, about themselves looking good, not being brave, not making any hard decisions.
Yes, I think I agree with you, but I think the additional thing there is, and again, mainly for the professional politicians, I would think, is they're short-term thinking because they've got to maintain their position, but at the same time they want to leave a legacy. Half of them want to leave some sort of legacy. So, I want a bridge named after me, or a tunnel named after me, or or statue, or some fucking bullshit, which is just ridiculous. So all the wrong drivers are there. So I don't think the system's wrong, but I do think there's some parts of it we need to change.
Yeah, I worry that Australia is held hostage by Queensland and the coal vote. I worry about self-interest. I worry about getting re-elected to do the right things, but they don't do the right things. The Barnaby Joyce and the Bob Catter idiot club, the more extreme they seem to be, the more votes they seem to win.
Well, again, I think that's a response to wokeism.
Yeah.
I think they're more popular now than they have ever been, same as One Nation, because people are sick to death of all the woke crap and the decisions being based on wokeism and things that don't matter to the general population. Today we found out there's 83 million or 87 million being paid to the lost generation, and the lost generation, while it's unfortunate, $87 million is a lot of money. So
not as much as 15 billion.
Not as much as 15 billion, no. But so who's asking for that? So I don't know. I think there needs to be some change of the system. I sort of thought, when we first started talking about this, that maybe we need to chase more actively online voting, and maybe have, I don't know, something like a yearly set of questions, or a referendum, but a yearly set of questions. Make the voting easy so it's not hard, you can do it from home. Ask 15 questions every year to the general population. Should we do this? Should we do this? Yes, or how strongly do you feel about, and then just get the data to help you support the decision.
But the problem with that is that politicians interrupt and change the wording to the point where you don't know what you're voting for. They did this with the second last or third last referendum when we tried to get rid of the royalty.
Yeah.
I was thinking about what you and I did for a living and how do we break this up according to how we would break it.
So I thought exactly the same thing. So if you looked at, and this covers a lot of areas. So if you looked at organisational change, I don't know what it's called nowadays, but organisational change, we always took an extreme position, knowing it would get watered down. Yep. And we also, the second part, and probably the most important part, was to embed the change. So if you look at, let's say, gay rights, gay rights. So the first part of the transformation has been done. We've raised awareness, acceptance, and all that sort of stuff. The second part about embedding the change is not being addressed. So, if everyone accepts, the LGBTQI alphabet community, okay, most people probably do. Of course, there's always going to be some extremes who don't think that. Okay, fine. So if this was a change in a company, we would have done the change, and the first thing we would have done was started acting in the new way that we want, that the target state. So if we think about, let's say, LGBTQI or what was the other one I was thinking of? I can't remember what it was, but okay. So we've done the change.
Well, let's break down how we would do the change.
Okay.
So we'd start with the drivers.
Yep.
And so I think one is lowering the expectation. Everyone has an expectation that the government's going to give them something free, that the roads are going to be perfect, that we just cannot afford to have this many roads and this many people on NDIS and this many people on Medicare and this many people on pensions. NDIS, yeah. It just doesn't work. No. It doesn't add up. And with an ageing population, it's going to get worse.
It is.
So we needed to somehow do something today by some brave people, which we don't have any of.
They're making big decisions, but they're making big decisions about things that don't matter to people at the cost of the more fundamental requirements. So, if we look to say an IT change, you can't have good IT services unless the core infrastructure runs well, right? The basics. So I think the same thing. So, okay, we're building new bridges and new roads and whatever. That's fine, right? Even though they probably won't get used. But at the cost of, if you go and drive in the country, or even today, just driving here, the local roads and the local basics that keep the country moving and running are shit.
Because we're wasting our money. I don't know what the
we're making wrong decisions. We're putting the money in the wrong spots.
Yeah. The second point I've got is 3 layers of government.
Yeah, this is a hard one.
I don't agree with 3 layers of government. I did until councils started politicising themselves.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I was about to say the same thing.
Once they've politicised themselves, they've kicked themselves out of a job.
Yeah, so I agree completely. So
I'd have federal and state, but state would be dumbed right down.
I'd keep 3. I'd have federal, state and local, but I would reduce the local especially to administration. State needs to be more strongly held accountable for the coordination of the councils. So if you look at the councils, let's take the introduction of the green bins across Victoria. So all the councils independently went over to Germany and travelled around the world to try and find out what the best green bin was and what the green bin system is. Green. Yeah, so surely the state has a role in saying, well, one council go and find out what the best systems are, bring that information back and give it to the other councils. It just does not seem to happen. So, and I agree with you also. I ran into a council. I'm a council representative at the local supermarket, which is probably 2 months ago, and they're taking a survey about what everyone wanted to do. And I said, well, stop giving all the approvals to medium density living, because the reason people moved out to the suburbs, and I'm only speaking for myself and probably quite selfishly, lower congestion, parks, all the reasons why you live in the suburbs. So the local councils take it upon themselves to say we're going to give away willy-nilly as many approvals as we need to get medium density going. Congestions in the street will rise. You won't be able to go to the parks anymore, blah, 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 all the knock-ons. When I questioned her about it, she said, well, there's a housing crisis. And I said, well, I didn't think that the housing crisis was a problem for local council. Surely the housing crisis should be dealt with at a federal level. They make decisions and pass down, we used to call them guidelines and policies and that sort of stuff in business. They should be dictating, okay, the policy for councils on medium density housing to help us solve the crisis is this. You'll give out 50% of approvals, but not 100% or whatever it is. So the councils are greedy because they get more rates. So, they're chasing the dough. As the old saying goes, follow the money, you'll find out what the problem is. Yeah. So I do think there's a role for local council. I just think it needs to be massively reduced to an administration only and enforcement almost of the policies that are set at federal and state level.
Let's come back to that when we get to the operating model, which will be our next step. I've got here, politicians should be limited to 2 consecutive terms. No professional politicians, no extension under any circumstances. This is what Trump's trying to do in the US. He's trying to cause so much concern and desperation in people he can stop Congress going to the upper house vote. So I think what we're doing is going to get rid of the professional voters, professional politicians, because they don't add anything. They add career management, they add conflict, they add self-interest.
Look, this self-interest, what did Paul Keating say? Back self-interest, at least they're trying. So, so I sort of get that, but I'm not completely with you not completely agree with you on the shorter term. I think that will drive shorter term decisions.
I actually think the term should be longer, but I'm saying 2 terms.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So the term isn't long enough for them to make the right decisions, because they say, in 3 years, federal, 1 year make decisions, 1 year defend a decision, through a 3rd year blame someone else for the decisions. So I think 5-year terms And the last thing before we get onto operating model should be preferential voting disappears. The way the Europeans do it is they have 25 people in a council. They go down to 2 once they've got clear leaders. Then everyone votes again on the 2. Now that leads back to your technology question. There's got to be a simple way to vote. If there's a simple way to vote, that will work.
Yeah.
But I hate the idea that we have an elected Prime Minister on 32% of the vote.
So do I.
That's not democracy. Whereas I think everyone having to vote is a good thing.
Yeah, so do I. It's a massive strength, but it's also one of the weaknesses.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good idea. So what you're sort of saying is that the people should decide on how to compromise, not the elected, head or heads.
Do you trust them?
No.
No, neither do I. There was one elected official that had less than 20% of the vote, but they made it. Was Angus Young? Angus.
Could be Angus Young.
Angus, the new head of the Liberal Party. I think he won by 500 votes and a preferential voting.
Ridiculous.
So if you look at the operating model, which is what we would normally do next,
Yep.
I think we've got to get away from this idea that every service is duplicated in every council and every state. So licence management.
Yeah,
Why couldn't that be centralised? Prioritising road builds.
They probably already do some of that. They probably already they probably make a decision at the federal level about how they're going to. So there's a federal funding and a state funding for the roads.
Yeah, but did the federal decide that Victoria would go into more debt than the rest of the country combined by building roads and tunnels?
No, the state decided that they were going to do it, and they asked the feds for some money.
Yeah, and because it was a Labor federal, they got the money. So,
but I agree. There's a lot of services between states and especially in local councils that could be, run centrally. So, again, if we talk about the operating model, we would say there's a set of services that are common to all, set of underlying services that are common to all platforms. Oh, sorry, the other way around.
Jurisdictions.
Yeah, jurisdictions. So you would say, okay, well, we're going to decide. We were saying the same thing. So we're going to have a state level run waste disposal, let's say, for example. The local councils will administer it locally. Like they might run trucks in a local area.
But they'd be dictated to.
They'll be dictated to, yeah. They'll be dictated to by the state level. Yeah. And if you replicate that model back up and say, okay, well, the same model should apply between state and feds. So the feds will decide some things and the states must follow irrespective of the party. Yeah. On some services. So, it's about degrees of freedom for each level.
And you would say for each service, which is the best run service in Australia, and that would become the national service. With the internet, with the increase in technology and applications and all this sort of stuff, and AI, there's no reason why licence management could be run out of Tasmania, and NDIS has run out of...
Yeah, and if we go back to the green bin example for local level, you'd say, okay, to implement it, you'd say, okay...
Someone did a report.
Every council do a report on why your service is the best in the state. We'll make a decision, and then we'll transfer resources and whatever else from the other councils into that one central one. They'll run it for everybody.
And you'd make sure there'd be a spread.
Yeah, of course.
Because you wouldn't want it all in...
No, yeah, of course. So you can't have... So Council A will be the bins, Council B will be parks and recreation, Council C will be roads, whatever it ends up being, you might end up with, 6 mega councils running it, but you'll still need some level of local administration to make sure that, again, if we talk about the garbage, who's going to administer the local truck management? If truck breaks down,
council.
Blah, blah, blah. The council does at the moment.
Under strict guidelines.
That
they have no choice but to implement.
Yep.
Yes. The other thing I had here was Institute Electronic Voting. You've brought that up a number of times. How can electronic voting be less secure than voting with a pencil?
I agree. I was thinking about it on the way over. Okay, we've all got a tax file number. So surely you can go to a website, type in your tax file number. And we need to make sure that the identifying data of that tax file number is stripped off, but the number itself is still unique. So let's say you come into a website, you type in your tax file number, and you go to vote, and it says you've already voted. Okay, that sets an alarm off somewhere, and the response to that is, okay, well, we're now authorised to go and look up that number and find out who's meant to be voting under that number, and throw away that first data and redo the vote. It wouldn't be that hard. 99% of the votes would get through. And as I say, you could have a yearly list of 15 questions.
Yep.
Do you want to spend 80 million on Indigenous affairs? Do you want to spend this much on a road? Whatever they are, and just once a year, go in for 10 minutes, answer those questions, publish the data, and lo and behold, the Prime Minister and the federal level have now got their own guidelines and immediate directions
that they have to adhere to. See, I think something like a little app on your phone that you pull up and it gives you a unique number. You type it into
You've already got a unique number. Your tax file number is unique.
But you need two-factor authentication or three-factor authentication.
Why?
Because it's voting and everybody will say that Trump said there was cheating all over the place because it's because they're using pencils. Yeah, but I don't understand why we can't upgrade to pens.
Yeah,
on the slow.
It's probably a cost thing.
So once you got the operating model, then we would cut costs.
Yep.
So costs would fall out in the centralisation of some of these services. Because if you took 10 departments of 1,000 people doing licence management, you'd probably end up with 2,000 people.
Yeah.
So costs would fall out as a result of that.
Yeah, so let's separate the what and the how. So if the what, the outcome we're chasing is more centralised for some services, cost reductions, okay, fine. The how would have to be over a long period of time. So you'd have to say, we're going to consolidate waste management in all the councils and all the states over the next 10 years. That would allow you to retrain for some of the areas that we're poor in, like teachers, tradies, whatever else. You'd have to address that.
But this is a problem with the short terms and the lack of bravery in politicians because they won't follow my plan. Because my next point is there should be a 50-year financial plan on superannuation, on taxation. So you should know, as a 20-year-old today, that when I retire when I'm 65, there will be no pension because the ageing population is growing so quickly and the working population is shrinking so quickly. There just will not be the money.
Yeah, well, yeah. So
I'm not saying stop pensions. What I'm saying is if we're spending $20 billion today on pensions, then that number is frozen. We have to somehow bring that down to the people that really need it.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to cover. We need a safety net for the population that either had a bad run because they're unemployed or they've had problems in their lives or whatever it might be. We will always need that safety net. We're a social country.
I agree with that.
So,
but if you knew, as your kids would know, that we were told there'd be no pension when we grew up, but I heard a Liberal senator talk at the last election or the previous election, said you should go out, retire, spend all your money and then sit on the pension for the rest of your life. Yeah, that's the wrong answer. The wrong answer is you need to be self-managed, self-focused.
As much as you can. As I say, there's always going to be, I don't know, I'm guessing 20% of the population that will need help. I think the same for things like native gearing. I think, we should say in 20 years' time, there'll be no negative gearing.
When we were doing change, I always worked on the situation that if I told someone there'd be a change in 12 months' time, they didn't care.
Yeah.
Because 12 months is too far away for them to do. If we do 25 years, see, I think these things should be...
But no, so we had before you answer, sorry. So let's take the negative gearing one, for example. So if we said in 20 years' time there'll be no negative gearing and there'll be these steps every year or 2 years so that it's relevant every year. So, we might say, okay, at the moment the tax break on negative gearing is, let's say, 30%. Next year it'll be going to 28. The year after we're going to 26. The year after that 20. Whatever it is, right? Yeah. And just slowly bring it down. And and
this comes back to a 50-year plan. If you knew that as an investor,
yeah. But to add to your point though about the change management part, if it's a year out, they don't care because it's either too far away from them to care about, or it hasn't hurt or affected them yet.
Yes.
So if you make something relevant every year, so if let's say you're a massive negative gearer, every year you need to face the decision about is it still worth staying in a negative geared environment. So every year it's going to get harder and harder to justify yourself. And you just walk them through it, you know what I mean?
But in that situation, you do financial planning, and you know that in year 4 it becomes uneconomic.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, most people.
I heard a stat once, and I can't tell you where it came from because I don't know, and I'm not sure it's true. But the average Liberal senator and electorate has 6.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I've
heard that. Yeah,
6 negatively geared properties. Yeah, fuck off. No wonder they're not voting to get rid of it.
But there's a lot of people out there who've got multiple properties. It's just, maybe that's the first change. Maybe 20 years' time we're getting rid of negative gearing. First, year 1, we're going to reduce the tax break, and you need to get down to 3. You can only have 3 properties. Year 5, it's going to come down to 25% tax break, and you're only allowed to have 2 properties.
See, I think, we're obviously Victorians talking about this. So I'm trying to think of a positive word about this government, but they can't. Taxing second properties is ridiculous. I can understand them trying to, if you had 2 houses in Brighton, the one should be used, and I think this was driven largely by the Chinese who would buy a lot of properties and not use them at all, just let them sit there. But you've got to think through the behaviours you're trying to drive before you implement a change.
Yeah, I'd add think through the unplanned, unintended consequences.
Yeah, I was saying the same thing. So I think the Labor government in Victoria has done such a job that people are leaving Victoria, which is amazing. Yeah. And what can you say about that? You can't disagree with them. So a 50-year plan, I think, is a really good one. Now, I got some real left ideas to come up with here, because we've been rather conservatives to date. We're criticising the electoral system, we're criticising politicians.
I don't think there's a lot. I think our electoral system is good. I think the compulsory voting is good. I think the 3 tiers is okay, but it needs cleaning up. But I think the system itself's probably okay, but it's attracting the wrong people or disempowering the people who are in there to actually get the job done.
It was interesting. Groth resigned after becoming. I'd love to talk to Groth because I think that he found out that there was so much backstabbing and so much bullshit going on, he couldn't actually do anything.
Well, Peter Garrett was the same. Yeah. He went into the Labor Party.
Then he was hung out for
the pink bats. So he went in all gung ho, good intentions, no worries. They gave him a big opportunity to help save the planet, which he's passionate about. Fine, he took that on and fucked it up. And then he got frustrated by, you rushed me into it. You tied my hands, and it's just not worth doing it. So we need to work out a way of making sure that the red tape and the political aspect of politics, that sounds ridiculous, but if you know what I mean. Where do I explain it? It's somehow reduced. And I that's why I think you've got to get it back to data, because at the moment it's about relationships in the party and. Who likes who and who's trying to feather their own nest and all that sort of crap.
And voting along company lines.
Well, yeah, so even that, so that pisses me off because the whole point of, we started off with this thing on the definition of government. In Australia, and that means in a democracy, they're meant to be representing the will of the people. So if we make a mistake, theoretically, the country's made a mistake. But that's actually not what happens. So
They're part of Labor, so they vote along Labor lines.
yeah, so
A
you
Liberal,
know, and
same
then
thing.
it's a big hullabaloo when it's a conscience vote. Every vote should be a conscience vote. If they, it's just lunacy.
So two extreme ideas. One is that people over a certain age who are voting on a government that will affect the next 30 years won't see those 30 years out. And I got an example of my mother-in-law and father-in-law who we loved, but when they went to the polling booth, basically my wife did the voting because they didn't know what was going on. So I think there's a problem at the low end and at the high end. And the problem with the low end is if you lower the voting age, they're essentially all Labor voters. Because everyone's idealistic at that age and we all want to share, and then as soon as you get money you start changing your mind. I think 16-year-olds should be allowed to vote. I think we should be encouraging 16-year-olds to understand the political system, and I think we should be encouraging them to be involved. And they're going to live with the mistakes they make. So at the moment it's boomers fucked everything. And I'm a boomer and I don't remember ever making that decision. But so at the low end I think it should be lowered to get people more involved in politics earlier on. And at the top end I think that the voting age should be reduced because we're getting nonsensical voting.
So I'm in two minds about that. And in response, I sort of think, well, I agree if we use your in-laws as an example, follow on that example, if they've got dementia or aren't sure what they're doing or unclear and don't know why they're voting for certain things, then I agree with you completely. Maybe there's a cut-off or a licence or something. I don't know. We retest people for licences when they get to 80, but we don't retest them for voting.
Cognitive ability.
Yeah, cognitive ability, right? Okay, so fine, but part of that, hand in hand with that, is those older people have got a lot of wisdom. They've seen it before. They've seen the mistakes that previous governments have made. Okay, fine. So how do we work out who's got cognitive problems and who is still a fully functioning, wise 80-year-old? The other end of the scale, you said let the 16-year-olds decide on the voting. So if I sat you down a year ago and said, how would you feel about 16-year-old you making decisions about finance?
Yeah, but I was exceptionally stupid at 16.
I've got a news tip for you, mate. Most of the 16-year-olds, they're not stupid. And as you say, at that age, they're happy to swap ideology and passion for money. They've got nothing to lose on the money side. So, of course, they fill their lives with ideology and passion and protest and all the things that you see from the youth, right? So there's got to be some sort of balance in there. Maybe it's a sliding scale. Maybe we say 16 you get half a vote, 18 you get three-quarters of a vote. I don't make this up as I go along.
We're making it all up.
And at 60, well, you start getting down again.
Yeah.
Unless you go to the doctor and the doctor gives us a tip. It's getting complicated now, but there's got to be a way of capturing some of that wisdom we've also got in the older people.
Yeah. I just think younger people need to be more involved and older people aren't involved. And I know that both sides of that equation make Labor more positive.
They do. And the inner suburbs, all that sort of stuff. Because if you look at the protests, they're all young. Look at the Palestine thing. They're all young. I mean, it's obviously there's a mix, but a lot of them are young. The environment, a lot of them are young. They're still passionate about it. But they haven't got the obligations and overheads of running a house and keeping it heated and children to feed and blah blah blah. So of course they're idealistic. But if I go back to what I said earlier on, the government's meant to be a representative of the people, and that includes every cross section of the people. So, if we looked at South Africa, we spent a lot of time in South Africa. They tried to introduce the, what's it called? They basically said that the government's got to be made up in the same percentage, actually they took it further. They said the government's got to be made up of the same percentages of whites versus blacks at the time they were coming out of apartheid, and every company had to be made up of the same ratio as the country in general. Which I don't mind that idea, especially not so much at the company level, but certainly at the country level. That okay.
You're opening opportunities for people to step up,
but
and equalise that.
Yeah, and get as much as we can a real representative of the general population in Parliament. Because at the moment it's all, well, we're trying to get more women in Parliament. Well, hang on. Are they 50%? Yeah, I don't know what the figure is now, but we should.
I don't think they are 50%.
Yeah, so okay, fine.
Especially in the Labor Party, Liberal Party.
Liberal Party, aren't you? Yeah. But, flip side of that is, well, best person for the job, irrespective.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to the female plight because I've seen females be held back, not by us in situations because we didn't care who was who. I've seen situations where targeted groups like a single mother who goes home at 4:30, 5 o'clock every night because she can't be involved in all the after-hours discussions and all that sort of stuff. That's a separate point. But my second extreme role is I don't like this Labor voting, Liberal voting cartels.
No, I agree.
I think they all should be independents, and I think independents should get together to form government. And I can't even say this with a straight face. The Prime Minister should be drawn from a hat. Of not politicians, because he should be an adjudicator. He or she should be an adjudicator to keep people working together.
Yeah, I like the idea, but I just think about it practically. We've sort of got that already. We've sort of got with the rise of the independents and the teals and stuff.
Yeah, I thought they'd go further.
Well, as I said at the very beginning, the problem with it is that they're promoting themselves mostly a lot of the time on one issue. So look at the Greens Party. Started off as we're all about green. Okay, at some point they got some seats. Now we're going to make decisions about budgets. Well, we hadn't really thought about budgets because we're here for the Greens.
And we've never done budgets.
We've never done budgets, right? So you end up with, okay, well, we hear you're passionate about the green stuff and we see you strongly argue and discuss that in the Parliament. But when we come to talk to you about budgets or infrastructure or whatever else it might, defence, suddenly we don't know where we stand with you. So, you end up with watered down decisions.
I think everyone should have a 10-point plan covering the 10 mandated points of government. The Greens have one or two, and I'm not sure being green is one of them.
Okay, so I like the idea. So it's similar to the thing about the standard questions. So what they should do is standardise the promotion of your party. So every party has to publish in the same language, in the same wording, in simple language, simple English, 10 policy statements that are all the same for every party, and they've just got to tick yes or no. Yeah. So the party, one party might say, question 1, yes, 2, yes, 3, yes, 4, no, whatever it might be. Next party, exactly the same policy statements, or maybe they have you can have 1 to 10, and they all publish.
Yeah. And they should be held accountable.
They should be held. They've got to be held accountable. That's the other problem.
At the end of their term, you should look at how they voted versus how they said they'd vote, and you should be shamed into retirement with an F grade because you didn't do anything you said you'd do. That's accountability.
The other one was the Hunters and Fishers. He got in with
Oh, yeah.
300 votes or something.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all he
He lived in the caravan.
wanted was to go hunting and fishing. He's got no idea about how the government works. He's got no idea how the budgets work. He's got no idea, where his vote should go. So, they're all... The process at the moment is he gets courted by the bigger parties. If you come over here, we'll support your position on hunting and voting. Okay, he comes across to one of the parties. He gets support for hunting and fishing, but now he suddenly finds himself, he's the key vote on how much we should spend on infrastructure. He's got a fucking clue.
I think he's the guy who lived in the caravan park.
Yeah. And he was as shocked as anyone that he got up. What am I going to do now?
I'll leave you with one last point, because I think, unless you've got any more points, I think we'll get into the end of it. How many politicians does it take to change a light bulb?
I'd say none, because they hire somebody else to do it. I don't know.
2. 1, to ensure the public that they're doing everything they can to fix the problem. And the other one screws the bulb into the tap.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, that was good.
Yeah, it was good.
It was good. While we have been quite flippant about some of the issues that are important to our country, having longer, fewer terms with non-professional politicians, getting rid of preferential voting, etc. But the main issue here is that trust and respect has been lost with the Australian people, and Australians are too lazy to do anything about it. You can't trust someone who lies or forgets campaign promises or uses their influence to get out of running over a child in a car. And the media is as bad or worse than the government. They allow lies to go uninvestigated. They glorify and highlight issues that rate well, not what is important. How can they respect us if they build roads to fill the union pockets, paying salaries that normal people can only dream of? And the roads in some cases are unnecessary. Victoria's debt is greater than the whole country, building shit we didn't ask for. And Victoria just unearthed $15 billion in rorts by the unions. $15 billion of rorts by the unions. But no one is surprised. The media don't respect us. They preach, spin the truth and give us their opinions, but no one gives us the facts anymore. Is it deliberate or not? The confusion the media creates by being one-sided, or are we just getting stupider and don't care? There used to be a great Australian saying and people believed in: keep the bastards honest. Who is doing this today? Not the media, not the politicians. There is a gap for honesty, integrity and respect, but no one will vote for that. We should now say, do whatever you want. We don't trust you. We know you're lying. We know you're only interested in the next soundbite. But we're too fucking lazy to get off our asses and vote for any real change.